Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would seem that unbeaten up-and-comer Liana Cruz, right here in the US of A, is set to return to action Friday, June 13th, on an OTX promotion at the 2300 Arena in her native Philadelphia, against an opponent that has yet to be announced officially, but Liana herself posted this image to her Instagram account. And based on the succession of names, it would seem that she's about to fight Regina Chavez.
Now that's the same Regina Chavez that just fought Jasmine Artiga for the newly vacated WBA title and lost a controversial decision. If this meme checks out, it would seem she's about to fight Liana, who sports a professional record of 10 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout, but don't let that fool you. Liana can punch.
To Regina Chavez, who sports a professional record of 8 wins with 5 losses and 3 draws, 1 recorded knockout, having never been knocked out. In 16 professional bouts, don't let those career blemishes fool you. At least 2 of them were controversial. Regina Chavez is very much a woman that's been hard done in the Clara Lescurat fight, the Jasmine Artiga fight, fights where the decision did not go her way, but they could have.
She's better than advertised, is what I'm getting at, and she could prove a difficult fight for Liana Cruz, who has no amateur experience. She's basically learning on the job.
Regina was last in action earlier this year, in March, the controversial Jasmine Artiga fight that took place on ProBox.
Liana was also in action earlier this year, back in January, against Amy Naerd. She fought 3 times last year, and she's already fought once, this one, so neither fighter has any ring rust they need to shake off.
There's a bit of backstory here. See, before Jasmine fought Regina for the vacant WBA title, based on the ranks, Liana was actually ranked ahead of Jasmine, and for whatever reason, the title shot went to Jasmine instead of Liana, so as you can imagine, she wasn't happy about that. Now she wishes to exact vengeance upon Jasmine Artiga because she feels, well, that shot should have went to her.
Liana Cruz is not just a pretty face with a nice ass. What her resume reveals, she's been in there with Marigüen Berlanga, Nancy Franco, Melis Gengloff. These are experienced, hard-nosed fighters.
She beat them. The Nancy Franco fight was only ruled a no contest because I think Liana tested positive for wacky tobacco.
Marijuana.
She's a very good fighter. No amateur experience, but she is a natural. How will she fare against the more experienced Regina Chavez, who gave Jasmine Artiga all she could handle when they fought? Is it going to be that way for Liana?
This has all the makings of a shootout because Regina's an action fighter, likes to put punches together, and so does Liana. She's a firecracker. She likes to put punches together too. Her sweet spot is mid-range to inside. Lots of natural ability there.
The super flyweight division is fast heating up. We're seeing more and more activity within this weight class. Not but a little over a week ago, we saw Mizuki Hiruta successfully defend her WBO title there. Mizuki is one of the names on Liana's hit list. She aspires to beat Regina, then beat Jasmine, then unify titles with Mizuki.
You know that a fight between Liana and Mizuki, if it were to happen that way, I feel like that fight would crown the face of this division, because both Mizuki and Liana have big personalities, and a penchant for the theatrical.
They like to pull out all the stops for their ring walks. Costumes, regalia, all the good stuff, though we can't put the cart before the horse. To make it there, Liana's gotta beat Regina. Then she's gotta beat Jasmine.
So let's see if she can.
And super middleweight news, Hamza Sheeraz dismisses Edgar Berlanga's claim of a war versus Canelo Alvarez. We've talked about this in passing, how in Edgar's mind, he seems to have a different view of his fight with Canelo than the rest of the world. He talks about it like he won some kind of moral victory. New York, Hamza Sheeraz saw a vastly different fight between Canelo and Edgar than the one that Edgar remembers, whereas Berlanga boasts about a competitive contest in which he busted up Canelo's face. Sheeraz recalls a reluctant challenger who approached pretty cautiously after getting knocked down during the third round. Mexico's Alvarez beat Brooklyn's Berlanga by big margins on all three judges' scorecards September 14th of the previous year, retaining his Ring Magazine, WBA, WBC, and WBO super middleweight titles at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas.
Edgar was noticeably bigger than Canelo. In terms of height, in terms of length, in terms of weight, he must have been 200 pounds in there.
Close to it. But he didn't use his size for anything. All he did was circle away from Canelo. All he did was run. 200 pounds of USDA Grade A poultry. England's Sheeraz, who will box Berlanga July 12th, belittled his recollection of the biggest fight of the super middleweight contender's career 8 months ago. He respected Canelo too much, Sheeraz told The Ring. That is the truth. He used his arm as an excuse, but the bottom line is he respected Canelo too much. When he dropped him, I think he felt the power, and people like him. You've heard the quote, empty cans make the most noise? That's what he is, an empty can. Empty can to the Brits, tomato can to the Americans, because if there was any substance and true warrior in him, he would have got up and had it out with Canelo and not tried to box. And that's what he done. And a lot of people do that with Canelo. I think it's definitely easier said than done, because when you're in there, it's a different story. When you're fighting someone like Canelo, even if you go out on your shield, you've given it your all.
That's why sometimes I push against the claim that Canelo's in decline. You're telling me that all of these bigger, younger fighters are fighting Canelo this way because he's in decline? They look scared of him to me.
They look terrified. These guys that have got height advantages, reach advantages, in some instances, weight advantages, after they rehydrate. Edgar looked like a goddamn cruiserweight in there. A left hook by Alvarez knocked Berlanga to the canvas at 1 minute and 4 seconds into the third round. Berlanga reached his feet before referee Harvey Dock counted to 5. Alvarez attempted to finish Berlanga, who wasn't badly hurt by the hook. Berlanga then traded with him to let the undisputed super middleweight champion know he wouldn't go away easily. Alvarez still won 10 rounds apiece, according to judges Max DeLuca, Steve Weisfeld, both of whom scored him a 118-109 winner. Judge David Sutherland scored 3 rounds for Berlanga, who lost 117-110 on his card. Now this fight with Hamza is going to be a very different fight for Edgar, because he's not fighting a short, stumpy, stocky fighter with a lower center of gravity that has to close the distance before he can land anything. No, with Hamza, he's facing a guy who's eye level to him with a lot of height and length of his own.
Some power.
He reckons he stood there and had a war with him, Sheeraz said. But the evidence is there. I watched it on YouTube, and there was no war happening there. He caught Canelo with a good few shots. But that's boxing. Listen, not to take it away from the guy, I think he's a good fighter. He's a good fighter. But when it comes to him and Canelo, he's definitely delusional about that. Berlanga 27 is listed by DraftKings as a slight favorite to beat Sheeraz in their 12-round super middleweight bout on the Ring's pay-per-view card, Ring 3, on July 12th at the Louis Armstrong Stadium, a tennis venue in Queens. Sheeraz, 25, will make his debut in the super middleweight division, in which the Ring ranks Berlanga as its number 9 contender.
Defense and distance control are going to play a big factor in this fight's outcome, because like I said, Hamza's not a little guy. He's not a guy who needs to be all in and close to Edgar Berlanga to touch him with punches. His best weapon in this fight is going to have to be the jab.
May seem an obvious piece of advice, but a persistent jab can stop a lot of things from happening before they start. Edgar is not a good fighter.
Keep that jab in his face and you blind him, you open him up for other punches. The issue is, you see how much respect Hamza gave Carlos Adames? And Carlos is not a big guy. Edgar is bigger than him, likely punches harder.
And he's likely gonna weigh a lot more than Carlos did the night of the fight. That Hamza gave Carlos a lot of respect, so who's to say he's not gonna give Edgar that same respect and maybe get outworked? There was talk of a hand injury, and that's why Hamza fought the way that he did.
But if it was all down to the hand injury, why did he leave middleweight right after that? And why did he sack his corner, Ricky Funes? Why is he now being trained by Andy Lee if the performance was down to a simple hand injury?
I've asked that before. I like Hamza's boxing, his fundamentals, more than Edgar's. But Edgar is more acclimated to this weight than Hamza. This is Hamza's first fight at super middle. And this is Hamza's first fight with Andy Lee in his corner.
I have to be careful to not let my disdain of Edgar Berlanga cloud my judgment. I want him to lose again. I want to see him knocked out. I want to see him carried out on a gurney.
On a stretcher. But is Hamza Sheeraz the man to do it? How confident are you guys out there that Hamza's the one to knock Edgar's block off? Canelo didn't knock him out.
Can Hamza?
Everyone wants to, in retrospect, now make this some sort of like indictment on Johnny or on Matchroom. They pushed him too fast, all this stuff and more, as opposed to maybe just saying like, look, lesson learned. He got beat. Now we'll find out who he is. Does he come back, or does this define him as a fighter? Ultimately, though, where do you sort of fall on that side of the debate? Is it the column A or is it the column B?
You know, everyone's playing Monday morning quarterback, right?
Yeah,
That's kind of what everyone's trying to do here, which is just rubbish. I've seen so many people that I respect in the game saying, "Oh, I should never have taken the rematch." And I'm like, well, one second, let me just go back to your tweets from December when you were saying Dave Allen isn't ready for this fight and Dave Allen should retire. All of a sudden now, you're saying things like Johnny shouldn't have fought him again. So look, I am with it happened. These are two big boys, two guys that are touching 260 pounds, that are throwing bombs. Someone's going to lose. And for this thing, there's been a lot of critique about Eddie Hearn, maybe not matchmaking correctly and maybe not putting these fighters in a position where they win. We don't want that.
Yes.
I want to see fights where I go in there and I don't know what's going to happen, not where a prospect gets to 25-0 having fought taxi drivers. Put them in there and put them in there with good test, and then we'll see what you're made of. And unfortunately, Johnny Fisher wasn't able to do the job on Saturday, but the heavyweight division is full of people that have lost big time, have been written off, and I mean, Daniel Dubois is probably the biggest case, have risen. I'm not saying Johnny Fisher's going to become a world champion, but give him time to grow. It was a defeat. He got the tactics wrong. He got beat by a better man. Let's see what he can do after he sort of heals up and comes back.
It was a fascinating conversation piece from both Ariel Helwani and Ade Oladipo. Their reactions to the reaction, the wave of criticism that we all saw swell after Johnny Fisher was stopped in violent, brutal fashion by Dave Allen.
So what's the solution? What do you recommend? That Matchroom match their fighters, baby soft to the point they wrap them in a cocoon of hugs and hot pockets so that they don't pull a muscle?
This shit didn't start on Saturday with Johnny Fisher. It's been going on for years. I remember when Josh Kelly lost to David Evanesian, Olympian Tony Jeffries was critical of Matchroom, saying that they rushed him. They rushed Josh Kelly. But what would you have them do? Have him fight ham sandwiches for 15, 20 fights before he fights a guy who can push back, a guy with a pulse? If they're going to go all in on you,
if they're going to invest, you've got to show them that you can go all the way. And a part of that is fighting people who can fight back.
How boring would boxing be if everything went according to plan all the time? Is that what people are advocating for? That the odds makers should never get it wrong, and upsets should never happen, because if they do, then somebody messed up.
Eddie's matching his guy's too tough.
Eddie Hearn has a lot of critics. Some of these people don't want boxing to be a sport. They want it to be more of a show where the proverbial good guy always wins. In this instance, the house fighter, because if the house fighter don't win, then something must be wrong.
Get enough of that in the American boxing scene. We don't need that from the British one. There's a reason the British boxing scene is more fervent and more vibrant than the American one. And it's because in the American one, you know what's gonna happen before the opening bell sounds. You know who's gonna win.
Most of the time you do. When a Gervonta Davis takes a knee, but Steve Willis doesn't rule it a knockdown, he lets him run to his corner to get toweled down, and nothing happens, there's no penalty.
When the judges score it a draw, and the New York State Athletic Commission are aware of all of these infractions in the middle of the round, but they do nothing.
This is what drives people away from boxing, because the message you're sending the customers is there are guys out there, they won't let them lose.
But for this to be a sport, somebody has to.
So that when a Johnny Fisher loses on a Matchroom show, a Terry Harper gets knocked out by an Alicia Baumgartner, a Josh Kelly gets knocked out by a David Avanesian, and Andy Ruiz shocks the world and stops an Anthony Joshua.
Believe it or not, that's actually good for boxing. That something unexpected happens. That going in, you never really know until you know. And that's with Matchroom. Whereas with some other promotions,
that's not the case. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Joshua. But him losing to Daniel Dubois, that was unexpected. He was the massive favorite going in, and something unexpected happened. You gotta shake things up a bit sometimes. It can't all go according to plan.
So that everybody can cry and pee and shit themselves that Johnny Fisher couldn't make it past Dave Allen? Tough titty. This is the hurt business.
Now, some of these criticisms levied towards the matchmakers at Matchroom are not made in good faith. Some of these people are just looking for a reason to take shots at them and take shots at Eddie. For some of them, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, some of it is because they're fans of different fighters that are with a different promotion.
They'll say things like another one of Eddie Hearns' hype jobs got exposed, not realizing Eddie just picked up Dave Allen.
Are you stupid or something? You're trying to make this out to be a big loss for Matchroom when they just signed the guy that beat their guy. So they don't lose either way.
But you want them to so bad, you make short-sighted, stupid comments like that. Stupid critiques. Boxing needs an air of spontaneity to survive and to thrive, for it to remain a sport.
Well, you don't want it to be? When Katie Taylor loses in Ireland, when she loses at home to Chantel Kinron, who has nowhere near her notoriety or marquee value, that's what keeps things interesting.
That's why you have to tune in. You can think whatever you want to think before the fight, but afterwards, if something unexpected happens, it'll blow you away.
That's why I'm a fan of the Matchroom brand.
And I have been for some years now, because they don't protect their fighters. Expect the unexpected.
Expect sink or swim situations.
These bleeding hearts that are expecting Matchroom to pour millions upon millions of dollars in these fighters' pockets, but the fighters don't have to hold up their end of the bargain. They gotta wrap them in bubble wrap.
Please.
I agree with Hideo Oladipo. That's how things are supposed to be. Unexpected things are supposed to happen because that's what keeps people coming back. When they don't know for sure, and they've got to tune in to find out.
It's what puts asses in the seats.